board. All right, Mary Wynn, you can start, and I'm gonna try to find, I opened the document, now I can't find it.
Right. So I think the issue with the leaks has really brought this back to the fore again, in terms of who's responsible for what and what position the association should take in any given circumstance. And I'll start at the very beginning by saying that each situation needs to be evaluated based on the facts and circumstances of that situation. But first I want to lay out some overall structural underpinnings of how we handle things, okay? If there is a situation where there is a covered loss and a damage claim that can be made under our insurance, that means that it qualifies as a covered loss and it exceeds the deductible. If
which is what?
It depends. I don't know. You guys have
I
to
think
tell me.
it's
10,000.
It's 10,000 for us. Okay.
Right. Most policies for buildings like yours have a different deductible, generally a higher deductible for water damage, as opposed to just other property damage. But 10,000 is a good number. I mean, you can talk to your carrier about whether it makes sense to raise that or have that stay where it is. If you raise it, you're basically telling your membership that they need to make sure that they have adequate HO6 coverage to be able to fill in when something is not covered under the association's policy. So it's a way of kind of cost sharing with insurance with your membership. But remember, with insurance, we're required to insure more than the association is responsible for repairing. Remember so why don't I step back a second? The master deed lays out the basic rules for who's supposed to repair what and who's supposed to pay for what. Okay, so in Article 9 of your master deed, this is all laid out. 9.1 talks about what the unit owner's responsibility is. And in a nutshell, it's to repair the unit. There are some exceptions. You know, the unit is defined as including everything in that space within the unit, but it also includes systems and appurtenances. I love that word. That's such a legal word, but systems and stuff, okay, that exclusively services the unit, even if it's not resident in the unit. The biggest example of that might be an HVAC condenser, okay? And as long as the unit owner is able to access the components of the unit without breaking the common elements or doing something like that, the unit owner is responsible for maintaining, repairing, and replacing their unit, okay? The association, on the other hand, is responsible for maintaining, repairing, and replacing the common elements, okay? And the association does the common elements at the association's cost, with the exception of limited common element patios, decks, balconies, things of that nature. Those, the association is responsible for performing the repair, but is supposed to charge the cost of the repair back to the benefiting unit owner, okay? And the same thing with if there's a unit component that they can't access without impacting the common elements, the association will be responsible for fixing that and billing that back to the unit owner. So all of these rules are basically designed to make sure that the association, that unit owners are responsible for their units, and the association is responsible for common elements, just to make sure there's uniformity and harmony in terms of how that work is done. And if there are limited common element repairs, the owner that is the beneficiary of that limited common element, balcony, terrace, whatever, has to pay for that. In the insurance world, we actually insure more than just the common elements. We insure the interior of units up to, I'm guessing you guys have like the standard up to builder's grade
Yeah.
coverage within your unit. And then any upgrades, or you decide you want to put gold leaf on your walls, that's on you, and your carrier would be responsible for that. Okay. So in fast forwarding to what's been going on with these leaks. On average, you have a leak in a unit and it's coming through a common element. Okay. It could be from the outside in, it could be a burst common element pipe inside the building. Either one of those are functionally equivalent. Okay. The association is responsible for fixing the common element, and the unit owner is responsible for repairing their unit. Now, I can understand, and when I first started practicing in this area 20 years ago, I was like, well, how is that fair? And it's not about fair, it's about what the contract is. When you buy your unit, you buy it subject to the contractual provisions of your master deed and governing documents. So it's not about where the leak comes from, it's about where the damage is. Now, so on average, water comes in through the facade. The association is responsible for repairing the facade to stop that water, and the unit owner is responsible for repairing the sheetrock, the flooring, all of those things. That's what your governing documents say.
No, they
Now, if you lay on top of that, the only times that this means that a lot of times we're having to educate owners and ourselves that that's what the rules are. That's what you bought when you bought here. Okay. Regardless of whether it might have been done differently in the past, that's what your governing documents say. Now, when would it make sense for the association to do interior repairs? If we have a concern that leaks have been going on for a long time, if the association hasn't responded as rapidly as we arguably should have, we view that more in the lens of like potential litigation. And we say, hey, we could have liability if these guys were to sue because we took too long to address this. We knew about it and we didn't move expeditiously. So in those kinds of cases, it does make good business sense for the association to say, we'll pay for these repairs. And generally, you're going to want to get a release from people because you don't want them to be able to come and sue you even after you've made those repairs. So my understanding of the numerous leaks that you have going right now that are being repaired and all of that is that it kind of falls into that category. But we have to look at each situation to make sure that it does. If it's from a leak that has been, known but hasn't been addressed, then it would make good business sense to assist in paying for the repairs inside the unit. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an all or nothing proposition. In each case, you evaluate it. You could say the association could pay for the repairs. The association could defray the cost of the repairs, and the unit owner picks up the rest. Or, the unit owner is left to make the repairs. So
And
that's
Mary,
kind of the 30,000 foot view.
yeah, and when you say, suppose I think there's one in that mix where the unit owner had the leak and did not inform the board for like a year, right? They didn't tell us, so how could we fix something if they didn't tell us?
It was not a year. It was not a year. The initial leak happened in April, and until I started asking questions, we did the inspections in July.
Right, but the unit owner didn't report it to us.
Yes, she reported it to Taylor.
In April?
Yep.
Okay, I thought there was one where the person noticed it, but a tenant didn't even say anything. Okay, I'm wrong.
No. That particular instance of all the leaks that have happened right now, that big, and there are two major ones that we're paying for floor repair. It happened in April, she reported it, but it just kind of fell into a gully, I guess, until
Right,
I
and that's
started
why we're
asking
paying for it.
questions.
That's why we're paying for that, okay.
Right. So those kind of cases where, for whatever reason, and we can get into whys, if you want to later, the association didn't respond. Those are the kind of situations I'm talking about where it very well may make sense for the association to pay for the repair in order to avoid litigation exposure.
Okay. So,
I have another question. I don't understand why, and I don't think some insurance agents have told us in the past, when they read our documentation, and I've seen this myself, that it says, even if the damage is caused even by themselves internally, the association is responsible to make them whole and pay for some repairs. And so the next question is, why, if the leak is caused by a common element and it damages the interior of the unit, I don't understand why the unit owner would have to pay for that.
So you know what, I'm looking now at where the insurance provisions are. If it's a covered loss, then the insurance does kick in.
So what does that mean, a covered? In other words, if we're covered by it?
Right, if it's something that the association's insurance policy would pay a claim on, that would be a covered loss.
And that has to be if it's more than $10,000.
Right, so, you know, the deductible plays into that. You know, we have a duty to basically make those proceeds of insurance available to the unit owner to repair the interior of their unit to the degree they're allocated to that.
right, we did that with Barbara Garcia or other people in the past, right? We got a claim and we gave them the money. Remember?
Correct.
Yeah, I remember.
Correct. It is not the association's obligation to make the unit owner whole. It is not the association's obligation to pay the deductible. You know, the deductible can be allocated in the board's interest. You guys have a resolution that actually does that based on.
Speak lay terms. What do you mean allocated?
So if you have a $10,000 deductible and we have $40,000 worth of damage to a unit and $60,000 worth of damage to the exterior facade. 60% of the claim would be the association's responsibility. So the association would be responsible for 60% of the deductible, and then 40% would be the unit owner's responsibility.
Okay.
And unit owners should be advised, you know, coverage of the deductible is one of the most wonderful benefits of an HO6 policy, a condo unit owner insurance policy. And, you know, coverage under those policies is relatively reasonable, all relative, but you know, people should definitely have that coverage, if for no other reason than because there are going to be cases where damage to the unit is not going to be covered by the association's policy because it falls under the deductible, and then the unit owner is left to their own devices on that. But if we look at like Article 9 that talks about maintenance, repair, and replacement, there is no discussion there about fault or anything like that. Now, obviously, unit owners, you know, people can sue if there's a dispute about something like that. On average, though, if there's a burst pipe and we became aware of it and we fix it right away, and we, you know, use with all due speed and all of that stuff, then the unit owner is responsible for repairing their unit from that.
I think that's very hard to defend, And I know in the past, and I've seen it in those documents, that's the contrary to what some of the and when
Well,
the
tell me where in the documents it
I don't
says
know.
otherwise.
I don't have it in front of me now, but in the
Okay.
past, the other, the unit owner's insurance agent will look at our documents and they will make.
Our
and then it
documents
says it
say
in the
our
document.
insurance is primary. I mean, it's different when you're talking about insurance. If there's not insurance coverage,
Right. This all has
okay?
to do with insurance, right?
Right. But by the way, even with insurance, like our coverage is primary over there. So, we can't tell them we're not going to file a claim. You got to file with your carrier. We're supposed to file a claim, even if it's something even if it's something the unit owner did, their own toilet
We never do
overflowed.
that. We
Right.
never do that. And some unit owners do not want to file any claims on their insurance.
Nobody wants to file a claim under insurance. Let's be
Right. So,
serious.
and you can't
Because
force
it
them
adds
to
to
do
your
that.
loss run and your premiums go up. That is
Well,
one reason why having a high deductible for you, I mean, you're basically kind of self-insuring up to 10,000, and you could look at making that higher. That's something you guys could talk with Barbara about, the pros and cons of having a higher deductible, to try to limit that,
Mary,
water.
Can you
Go
go
ahead.
back, can you go back to the part about the association is supposed to file a claim for basically everything that ever happens, no matter who ever caused it, whether it's Joe Schmo sat on his toilet too hard. You said that, right?
What I said is that our coverage is primary for covered loss claims in the building. And
So I guess this is where we're a little dense, where we don't know what's a covered loss, I think.
and so like flooding is outside, so if you have like a flood claim of some kind, that's outside what your carrier would cover. They have different rules about water seepage and stuff.
Give me an example of why we should go to Barbara immediately to be like, here's what happened, what do we do?
I'm sorry, what are you asking?
Is this reinforcing a best
Oh.
practice that the minute something happens, we go to Barbara from USI and say, a toilet exploded, this is what happened, what do we do?
I think conferring with your insurance carrier on how to approach any situation is an excellent approach.
Well, we would have had an open line to her this last year or two with all the leaks we've had, which were not major, but we would have been on the phone to her. We would have just had an open private line to her. So number two,
she can give you advice on, you should report this to the carrier. You shouldn't report this to the carrier. There is coverage for this. There's no coverage for that.
well, the other issue there is, in the past, in the earlier days when I was on the board, or maybe before, we had some major leaks from top to bottom because of contractors doing X and such, and our insurance was canceled. And we had to scurry to find, at the last minute too, before renewal, we had to scurry. So we were penalized for reporting, and these were major, not like what's happening today, this last year.
Right. So again, I think talking to Barbara strategically about where your deductible should be is something that I think would be a good idea, because if you raise your deductible higher than what it is now, you are effectively pushing some of that responsibility to unit owners and making it where you're not going to have, if it went up to 20,000, let's say. So then that $15,000 damage claim is not going to be against your policy because it won't be reported.
And we would pay for that. Well, somebody would pay for that.
Somebody would pay for it. It depends on where the damage is. And
it's very hard to explain to folks who have a hole in their ceiling that you're going to be responsible to fix the inside, even though the source of the leak was
I understand that.
Common one.
I understand that.
It's very difficult.
I understand that.
Quite frankly, not understandable by me.
So my point on this, and I understand, I've sat in your position going, how is this possible? And it's because it's contractual. Like when you buy
Oh.
your unit,
No,
you
but-
buy subject to what
Sure.
the master deed says.
Mary Wynn, I have a
So-
question. So say you had a private, like, single family home, right? I'm sitting at 513 Burlington Avenue. I have my homeowner's policy. My neighbor's contractor's crane falls on my house. I don't know. And I'm trying to think of a metaphor where like my homeowners would have to fix my bathroom, but they would subrogate against
Yeah.
maybe that homeowner,
Yeah.
right?
If
And
if they choose to do that.
Right, and that's the ideal way to do it. Let the insurance carriers duke it out rather than you filing
Right,
a
but
suit against your.
I'm trying to draw a parallel that no matter what the cause is, I have to, in theory, whether I'm living in an apartment building or in a single family home, whether it's the cause from upstairs, the roof, whatever, in theory, I'm supposed to go to my insurance.
You're
Right,
supposed to go.
I'll take the example of a tree falling from your neighbor's property, okay? And it hits your house. So it's not my tree. My insurance has to cover that, okay? And unless my carrier is able to establish that the owner next door knew or reasonably should have known that the tree was in bad shape and needed to be removed, it's the responsibility is where the damage lies, not necessarily what caused the damage.
So in our situation, it's the did we know about it and not do anything about it that you mentioned earlier. That makes
Correct.
the institution responsible.
And that's why we have to look at these situations. And again, there's no insurance involved there too, okay? But we have to look through kind of a litigation lens to say, is it more cost effective for the association to agree to pay for these repairs in exchange for an agreement with the owner that resolves everything associated with that water intrusion event? And many times it does, it makes it, because what'll happen if they sue you is then you go to your directors and officers liability insurance carrier, and you say, we're being sued, and they look at the lawsuit and they provide a defense. But again, now you're creating a loss run on your D&O policy that will, if you get a bunch of those lawsuits, can have the same effect that you talked about with your other insurance before. They can drop you, they can raise your rates dramatically. So, it's a protection that you have, but you want to avoid having to use that protection again if it's reasonable. Like the amounts of repair damage that I've seen in a lot of these things all sounded like reasonable numbers. Now, admittedly, this is your money. This is everybody's money collectively. You all have fiduciary duties as board members. And I think this is a good exercise of business judgment by the board to say, we're going to go beyond what we are required to do under the master deed in order to resolve a potential litigation. So it's the same kind of authority as you might have, let's say, if a unit owner got into some heavy arrears and you decide to kind of cut them a deal to bring them current because it's worth getting some money rather than none. So, you waive $5,000 worth of whatever, and then they have to pay the rest. That's all within the scope of your authority as a board.
Right, so we're theoretically over this last year with all these, they've all been the repair of the interiors of most of these, all the ones I sent you, are less than, in some cases, less than $1,500. And so
which we'll run through in legal fees in like 32 seconds if they decide
absolutely,
to
absolutely. We had two major ones that were had floor repair, and even those with the repair of the interior and the floors didn't get to $10,000.
Right.
So
But I
you're
do,
saying-
but I think it might make sense. You know, I know this is a hard concept for people to wrap their heads around. But I think having some education of your
Correct.
membership to say, here are the default rules. You know, if there isn't insurance coverage, or the damage is less than the deductible if it would have been covered, okay? The association repairs the common elements and you repair your unit. And you're gonna have to tell people that a number of times and get questions and let people
Correct.
say, just so that they understand what the normal allocation of responsibility is. And then you take each situation based on its facts and circumstances.
Correct.
And you
And I
make
think-
business decisions based on that.
And I think if that's the appropriate way to go. And I think we would have to have that, starting from like, let's say June at that middle meeting, we have to provide the documentation where it says that, because the first question they're going to ask is, I didn't see that in the master deed. Number one. Number two, we have to iterate it several times. And I think somebody like you, Mary Wynn, has to be there too. So we would have to do it, maybe at the big June meeting. We'd have to do it in December from a point going forward. Because once we start asking them to sign these waivers that you have created, we're going to get a lot of pushback on that. And so, yes, if this is the way we're going to move forward, and we are going to ask them, according to the master deed documentation, and you want to remind them again, this is what you signed up for. Nobody reads that before they buy anything.
Nobody reads it ever.
Buyer
Yeah.
beware, right? So if we're going to do all that, then we have to methodically set that up in such a way that they're not going to come back and say, you didn't tell me that, or I don't read that. So I'm just saying, this is all well and good, but it's going to be an
education process, and you're going to have to do it multiple times. It's
right. And
it's
so
kind of like toddlers.
Responsibility to not, I mean, people have to be grown-ups and adults. I mean, I understand it's nice and it's neighborly to educate, but like,
it's just,
you're responsible as an adult to sign the contract to read it. Now,
it's what's the word? It's
not
generally speaking, if there's something wrong at the external part of the building and it leaks in, like we have clogged condensation pipes occasionally. Now, what we've done to mitigate that is 4 to 5 times a year, we blow them out in the basement. We have now instituted a few policies to say you must have them maintained, the HVAC units. We, in many cases, we put clean outs inside a unit at the expense of the unit owner to do that from their point of view. So we've done some things. However, when you say my wall was damaged by a common element backing up or whatever, it just seems logical that we would pay to have the sheetrock repaired and painted.
I totally hear you. My point is, number one, first of all, I don't think we're gonna get a ton of pushback from the waivers. It's basically like, we did the work, you're signing this just to say, like, the association did the work.
But it says in the waiver, we're not obligated to do that. The minute you see that, you think, what? What do you mean you're not obligated? It was a common element that leads. So my point, I get all that. I get all this. That's why I think I'm going to initiate our orientation meetings at the end of the first quarter with anybody that was here and go over some of this in the orientation.
So
because once we start saying it over and over and over and over again.
I have actually a different proposal, only because I think Mary Wynn explains it really well. I think we should have a special Zoom meeting just on insurance.
Could be.
With everybody, because
sure.
At our meetings, we don't get a lot of people.
No.
I think Mary Wynn explains it so clearly. And then when they hear it coming from attorney, no disrespect to you, Val, but when they hear it coming from the attorney,
I agree.
We have Barbara on also.
I agree.
I think it's just a lot more meaningful, powerful.
No, I agree. That's why I think there are many different prongs to this. And one is an official by Mary Wynn. We say it at various times. We say it all the time, but I do agree. Mary Wynn is the best person to deliver that, especially initially. And at a formal something or a separate meeting, I absolutely agree. Yeah, no, I prefer an
think
objective
having,
person.
I think having a meeting makes a lot of sense. I think being able to have some back and forth where people can ask questions, you know, it again, it takes a couple of times for it to sink in with people. Kara, I totally agree with you. People are grown-ups. You purchased your unit. You're on notice whether you read the master deed or not. But we're just going to highlight to you that this is what the master deed says, and this is how these kind of provisions have been interpreted by judges and courts. And you know what we're looking to do. So nobody's looking to screw anybody. Everybody's trying to help everybody understand.
Sure.
And so, you know, we want to have this conversation about repairs and insurance.
And I think it's not a bad idea to say, listen, the association has paid for some repairs because it took months to get a contractor to come and do the EFS. We've done these, right? It's not like, to your point, Mary, when it's not a black and white thing, there are some times where the association will pay for it, right? I mean,
the way I like to think of it, the association's going to pay for it if the association is at fault. And fault doesn't mean that there was a leak in the common elements. It means that we didn't respond as we should have. We didn't do things that we should have. If there was preventive maintenance that should have been done and we didn't do it, and then something, so again, everything gets very fact specific depending on what exactly happened in a given circumstance. But just because it's coming from a common element, like the burst pipe one is the best one. How do you know when a pipe is going to, a burst pipe? You know, how are you going to know when a pipe's
That
going to
hasn't
burst?
happened since I've been here.
And that's a good thing. It doesn't happen. Generally, when it happens, it's not like a burst. Like somebody has tapped in with some kind of long nail and grazed a pipe.
Yep.
And some of those are some of the most difficult leaks to be able to diagnose because the water is following pipes and doing all this other
Correct.
okay, so we only have 4 minutes left before Zoom is going to kick us off. So I think immediate next steps are, what's the recommendation for handing these waivers to these people, Mary Wynn? Like, do you think, if we had said like Taylor should do it, and maybe, I don't know, we got to get them signed. Like, how do we get them signed? That's one thing. The second thing is, I will send you the how to handle leaks document, blah, 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 so we can dust that off, maybe tweak it. And then we'll schedule an insurance / damage, whatever we're going to call it, meeting with you and Barbara and the full association separately. In the meantime, until we can get all that done, I think what we're agreeing to, the next time something happens, the first call we make after getting Peter or whoever is, Barbara, this is what's going on. We need your advice, right?
Right.
Does that sound like, okay. So what do we do?
I think that makes perfect sense. So,
Okay, so
how
the
to
list,
do with the waivers? I mean, I think a personal approach is how it's the best way to go. Explain to people that the association has made these repairs, even though it's not to the common elements. And technically it's not the association's responsibility to make these repairs, but we thought that this was the right position to take in this particular instance. And we're asking you to acknowledge that and that you accept the repairs that we've made.
All right, so do you guys want me to have these conversations? Like, who should do it?
no, yeah, who should deliver that information to each individual owner?
You want me to do it?
No, I think Taylor should do it.
Oh, okay.
I think it's definitely a management function. I think that would be, you know, and if Lloyd, if you're looking for a script or something to work from, you know, we can put something together. But I think calmness and reasonableness, and it's not, you know, we're not saying we're not doing it. And for most of these, it's already done. Yeah, it's done
And
already.
he's like memorializing it, right? We did it.
Right.
This is just like making it like documenting that we did it, basically.
Right.
Sure.
So the last list I sent you some additions and some things. So going forward, so that's what we've done. We fixed all of these things already.
Right, you just sent one yesterday morning, right?
Yeah, that was in addition to E5E because now they have a floor warping issue, which could have been caused by the outside wall on a dead balcony, which had already been repaired because the leak went down to the studio apartment below. They didn't notice this warping until we were working in the kitchen part, which is a different part of the, so so right now, yeah, I added that. So now they're waiting for the report. Now I got a report from both LA and also the flooring guy, whose verbal thing to me was wait until, it's a very small amount, but wait until the weather temperatures, springtime comes, because sometimes the boards flatten out.
Hey guys, I'm so sorry. It's saying we have less than a minute. So I don't know if you want to do you want me to send another link?
I don't know, whatever you want to do. I have to leave by about a 11:45, so, anyway.
I'm fine if you want to do another link.
All right, keep talking.
Okay.
So basically that one, we fixed the outside, we did some patchwork on the outside. So we've already taken care of, I think, the cause of this. So I got an estimate from the floor guy of $2,000 to fix the floor. I haven't shared any of this yet with the